This is a big day, a beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization.
The entire history of civilization, the entire history of mankind. Let's go back before civilization. Biggest day, he's talking about Middle East peace. Israel, the Arabs, the bloodthirsty, genocidal lunatics of Hamas. The Democrats are on the side of Hamas. They like Hamas. Me, I like Israel. I go with civilization every time. The Democrats, they go with violence and mayhem and genocide. The Hitler Party, that was the Socialist Workers' Party of Germany, living next door to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And, of course, the Chinese communists murdered more people than anybody. And in Philadelphia, the Democrats are going to raise the Chinese Communist flag over City Hall today. That's their plan, to celebrate communism. Oh, welcome back. Hour number three. We were talking about the government shutdown. The news media is spinning it already. CNN, they're spinning it all over the place. Oh, yeah, Capitol Hill is up in arms. Well, the Republicans in the House already passed the budget that would keep the government open. The Republicans in the Senate want to vote to pass it to keep the government open. The Lizard King, Chuck Schumer, and the other Democrats, they're fighting against civilization. They're fighting against keeping the government open. And the news media will say, oh, well, it's just on Capitol Hill. There's a lot of disagreement. The Republicans need 60 votes in the Senate because the filibuster rule to pass the funding bill, the continuing resolution. They'd call it a clean CR. Everybody speaks in code. We've got a code, and that excludes 99.8% of the population around the country. But never mind that. Now let me go to the meeting at the White House yesterday. President Trump met with the congressional leadership from the House and the Senate, Republican and Democrat, about keeping the government open. The Democrats are obstructing. The Lizard King, his little tongue is squirting out all over the place, and he's obstructing because he's a lizard-like reptilian, and that's never helpful when you're trying to get things done. But the president also met with the Prime Minister of Israel. His name is Benjamin Netanyahu. And Benjamin Netanyahu is not to be toyed with. He's a former commando. His brother, a late commando, who was killed by during the raid on Entebbe, where the Islamists had kidnapped and they were murdering everybody. And Netanyahu's brother was killed in that raid on Entebbe. And he grew up in the military, and he knows a thing or two about what's going on over there. And he's got a lot of brass. Benjamin Netanyahu does. But I want to get to some of the audio from that because President Trump, where it begins at number 16 on our cut sheet today, our actualities. That's a radio term, inside a radio term. But let's go to the president meeting with Netanyahu and meeting with Republican leadership. The Democrat leadership is pro-war. Republican presidents didn't get us into a lot of wars. Democrat presidents got us into a lot of wars. Woodrow Wilson in World War I, and FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, World War II, and Harry Truman, after dropping 2 atomic bombs on Japan, then got us into the Korean War. Then first John F. Kennedy, and then Lyndon B. Johnson got us into the Vietnam War. And then the Clinton administration tied our hands behind our back, leading up to the September 11th attacks. And then we got into the war against the Islamists. And Bill Clinton had an opportunity to have Osama bin Laden taken out years before anybody knew his name in the United States, and he didn't do it. But never mind that. The Democrats, they're the party of war. They're the party of political violence, the party of political assassination. Let's go to President Trump. We just played the number 16. Let's go to President Trump from yesterday, number 17. And this is a crazy, crazy idea that the Arabs that call themselves Palestinians, no ethnically different than the Jordanian Arabs or anything of the kind, and It's up to them. Do they want peace? And I'll explain my concerns going forward. But let me say that, we're dealing with the Arab world here. You heard of the Crusades? All right, number 17.
I challenge the Palestinians to take responsibility for their destiny, because that's what we're giving them. We're giving them responsibility for their destiny, fully condemn and prohibit terrorism and earn their way to a brighter future.
Prohibit terrorism, but they live and breathe terrorism. That they're kidnappers, brigands, murderers, pirates. And it's the proud tradition of the people there in that region of the world. Go back to the Barbary pirates and Thomas Jefferson, and you go back a lot further than that. Go back to the Romans and Jesus, and you can go before that too. You honestly can. But President Trump saying we're asking the Palestinians, so-called Hamas is what you're talking about, the Palestinian Authority to a much lesser extent, but Hamas primarily. He wants the Palestinians to take responsibility for their own destiny and not commit acts of terrorism. I just don't see that going very well, given the history of the people there who have never, in the history of humankind, and they go back, it's as old as dirt, and they've never taken responsibility for themselves in the context of the civilized world. But never mind that. Benjamin Netanyahu is the prime minister of Israel, and he wants peace, of course, and he doesn't want to have to kill every filthy, pit-dwelling troglodyte, kidnapping, raping, torturing, dismembering terrorist. But if you got to kill him, then you got to kill him because, you don't want your own kids to be slaughtered by the troglodytes, right? Benjamin Netanyahu.
If Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way. But it will be done.
We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. And that's the reality of it. And they've been fighting. They gave the so-called Palestinian people the Gaza, total control, democracy, your own election. First time in the history of the people. And they have an election, and they elect a terror group that is a blood-drenched genocidal death cult. And when they elected Hamas, they behaved, as you might expect, a genocidal death cult to behave. They set out to perpetrate a genocide and destroy the civilized country next door that actually gives them electricity and clean water and medicine and all the supplies that they need to live. And they talk about biting the hand that feeds you. Isn't that extraordinary? So what's going to happen? I was talking to Michael Piercy about it this morning. There's an old movie, 1979 movie called Breaking Away. And it was kind of a fun movie when it came out, and it's still kind of a fun movie with Dennis Quaid and Daniel Stern and Jackie Earl Haley and Dennis Christopher. But really, Dennis Quaid was the star of the movie. Daniel Stern was second up. And the guy, they're four teenagers, and they live in central Indiana. And one of them is a big bicycle racer, and it's kind of a bike racing movie in the University of Indiana and all that stuff, the Mini 500 bike race. But the four teenagers are hanging out in front of a store like, the local 7-Eleven. And the local cop shows up and sees the four kids hanging out looking like they're up to no good. And the cop says, how's it going, boys? And it sounded like this.
How you doing, guys? Well, we're a little disturbed by the developments in the Middle East, but other than that.
And that's it. That's the whole joke. A 1979 movie. And it's, a little concerned about the developments in the Middle East other than that. And here we are. What is it? 46 years later, and it might as well be 460 years later because some things never change. Let me just say that some things never change. But let's go to the former Israeli ambassador to the United States, and this is Michael Oren. Michael Oren, who's a smart guy, and he's talking about what we're looking at in the Middle East and what we're seeing at the Trump White House yesterday. Michael Oren, a smart Israeli former ambassador.
Before I was an ambassador, I was a history professor. You got to go back. You got to go back maybe to Teddy Roosevelt to see an achievement that would match that of President Trump and his team. Keep in mind, what has he done here? He's brought together countries, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, with European countries that don't even agree on anything, much less on Israel, brought them all together to support this peace plan. I really don't know much like it, not many examples throughout history.
Throughout all of history, you have to go back to Teddy Roosevelt, he says, before. And I've got to say, I've compared Donald Trump to Teddy Roosevelt a number of times. I do it over the dinner table, and he's such a character, and Teddy Roosevelt was such a character. And a Democrat shot Teddy Roosevelt, too. He survived. And in fact, not only did he survive, he was shot before he was to deliver a speech. And the bullet hit him in the chest, and the speech was folded up on paper in his coat pocket, and the bullet hit the speech, and he walked it off and went and delivered the speech because, he was Teddy Roosevelt, and he was an amazing guy. Michael Oren, the former Israeli ambassador to the United States, and also a former member of the Knesset in Israel, the legislature in Israel. And Michael Oren, I've been following him for long. He's been around for a lot of years. Oh, he's a very smart, very articulate guy, and is it racist to say he's articulate? And as he was a history teacher, you got to go back to Teddy Roosevelt to see anything as big as what we're watching right now. And the president and Netanyahu are giving the so-called Palestinians, a fake ethnic group, all the latitude in the world to do the right thing. Will they do the right thing? The smart money is on no. The smart money, that's my humble opinion. President Trump is trying. He's given him every opportunity. Michael Oren.
It's true that it all hinges on Hamas, but if Hamas says no, then at least the world knows who's responsible for blocking peace. And that's a tremendous, tremendous achievement.
And that is a tremendous, and it's, again, I honestly think President Trump has put Schumer and the Democrats in a corner when it comes to the government shutdown, but they can rely on the Democrat media to lie about it. And putting Hamas in a corner, nobody puts baby in a corner, but Hamas in a corner, they don't care because they're a death cult, they're suicidal. In fact, I think Michael Oren might have talked about that.
There's only one time frame. It says that within 72 hours of accepting this agreement, Hamas has to release all the hostages. There's no other there's no time that says on a certain amount of date this has to happen. Now, Hamas is going to say, and I guarantee Hamas is going to say, well, we're looking at this, and we'll let you know our answer in a couple of days. And when we give you our answer, we're going to have a couple of reservations. We're going to accept it, but with reservations. And then Hamas is going to say, mark my words on this, we don't even know where all the hostages are.
We don't. That's true. You can always rely on the so-called Palestinians who never miss an opportunity to say, oh, well, we want to return the hostages, but we can't. And they'll give you the slow roll. They are the very definition of the slow roll. And as far as they're concerned, they've got another 1,000 years to give you the slow roll because really death is their ultimate goal. It's not like an inevitability. It's a goal. Michael Oren.
Hamas is a radical Islamist terrorist organization. These are people who would prefer to die rather than to surrender. And we're not used to dealing with people for whom death is a logical option, but that's what it is with Hamas. And yes, they can be pressured by Qatar, by Egypt, but at the end of the day, they think they're serving Allah. They want to die, and they may just choose to do that.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Michael Oren, good, smart guy, well-informed. He knows his history, modern and ancient. And the Palestinians have been given opportunity after opportunity. They never miss the opportunity to miss an opportunity. One of the great phrases coined about the so-called Palestinian leadership. These are extraordinary times we're in. And I've got more President Trump coming up and more everything coming up. Right now, let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Nabil, calling from Northwest Arkansas. Nabil, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Hey, Chris. How's it going?
Very well, Nabil. How are you?
Good. Hey, just wanted to make a small correction. I've actually studied the Palestinian, quote-unquote resistance against Israel for a while.
Uh-huh.
The raid on Entebbe was actually carried out, well, not the raid itself, but the hijacking was carried out by a group called Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine.
Right.
You remember those guys?
Yeah, well, it's one of many, but yes, and it's another one I think has been phased out. You don't hear about them anymore, right?
Right. They were actually not Islamists. They were communists, or may I say Baptists. These people are actually more extreme than the PLO. They broke off from the PLO because they felt that the PLO didn't go far enough at the time.
Well,
they were involved in airplane hijackings in the 60s and 70s, if you remember.
Yeah, and the red-green nexus, the like the Israeli the Olympic takeover in Munich in 1972, that was Black September, right? And they were demanding the release of communist guerrillas from German prisons.
I don't remember the exact details on that one.
Yeah,
but I got to read up on that one.
Yeah, Red Brigade people that Black September were, and the red, green, the communists and the Islamists, they don't have a lot in common, Nabil, but they both like murder.
Yeah, actually, the thing with Islamism among the Palestinians didn't start until the late 80s with the first Intifada, if you remember. Hamas actually emerged as a result of the collaboration with the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt, which was an Islamic group. But the Palestinian movement itself was highly secularized from the get-go.
Well, that's right. The Arabists and Nasser and the rise in Egypt, where the Muslim Brotherhood started and grew. That's right.
Right. Actually, Nasser was very much opposed to the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, he was violently opposed to them, actually. Mm-hmm. But the PLO was a result of basically seeing that in the very beginning there was no organized Palestinian resistance against Israel. That actually was organized.
Well, let me ask you this: what do you think of where we are today with the possibility of striking a deal with Hamas?
I'm not too optimistic. If Hamas is realistic, and I'm hoping that some of them come to their senses, they realize that either they, if they really want peace for the people, they would accept this deal. Yeah, peace and prosperity. And, Nabil, as I understand it, based on what I've consumed on the subject, so much of the senior leadership, the old terrorists in Hamas, have been killed by Israel since the October 7th attack, that there's a much younger generation in charge, and the Israelis are hopeful that the younger generation will want prosperity. Yeah, peace in the Middle East. I think that's a fun idea. Nabil's a smart guy. Been speaking to Nabil here and there, on and off, for years, and he is a knowledgeable and well-informed individual. And it's true about the red-green coalition, the Islamists and the communists. And again, they have so little in common except that they love murder. Both sides. The communists murdered more people than anybody ever in the history of the world. Everybody knows that, right? But yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The Democrats, speaking of communists and Islamists, that might bring us to Zoran Mamdani and soundbite number 24, because he's half Islamist and half communist. And he's the Democrat Party's nominee for the mayor of New York race, which is ongoing or upcoming. The election is upcoming. And just completely berserk, but he was speaking to people and trying to explain himself and doing a very poor job of it because, he's been a big defund the police lefty. And he's a communist. He wants more crime. They love crime. And their policies lead to more crime because, they like murder. And the problem is not our guns, it's their sons. And a tweet from Zoran Kwame Mamdani the commie, from June 28th of 2020. So some time ago now. More than 5 years ago, he tweeted out, "We don't need an investigation to know that the NYPD is racist, anti-queer, and a major threat to public safety. What we need is to defund the NYPD. But your deal with New York City Mayor uses budget tricks to keep as many cops as possible on the beat. No to fake cuts," capital letters on no. "No to fake cuts. Defund the police." And he was asked, because he's likely to become the next mayor of our most populous city, New York, and he's he's anti-capitalist. He's basically a communist, and he's an anti-Semite, wipe Israel off the map from the river to the sea. Total war on all fronts from this guy. He might have been involved, if he were older, on the taking hostages at Entebbe that we were just talking about here with Nabil. But let's go to what Zoran Kwame Mamdani, the commie, said in his most recent public appearance, and see if you can figure out, because somebody asked him, "Hey, just a couple of years ago, you were talking about defunding the police. You're all anti-police and everything. What about that?"
The thing that I have appreciated the most in conversations around policing is the conversations I've had with rank and file officers. Those are the conversations where I share my reflections about where we are in this moment, where we've been, and also what it will mean to build together to deliver that public safety.
I'm sorry, what? What do you want? It's just he's being compared today for that comment to Kamala Harris with the new Kwame Mamdani, the commie word salad that no one can decipher. But rest assured, he's lying, because that's what commies do, and then they kill everybody and steal the stuff that that's there on the table, because that's what they do. Now let's go to Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of War or the Secretary of Defense, depending. I'm still not sure whether you have to go through Congress to change the name of a department or not. But the Trump administration said we're going to call it the Department of War because that's what they're for. And it's also for defense. But okay, so we got that. And that's a little bit of fun, actually. The Pentagon's still called the Pentagon. It still has 5 sides. It's still a 5-sided building. But let's go to Pete Hegseth, who is a now former Army officer who served in combat and then became a news guy and news anchor, and then the Secretary of Defense, and then the first Secretary of War since before World War II. And Pete Hegseth at Quantico, the U.S. Marine Corps base at Quantico, Virginia, this morning, today, Tuesday, the 30th of September. And President Trump showed up after Hegseth was done, showed up a little later. And then the president is back at the White House today, and he's got more big. I think he's holding another press conference at the White House today. But here is Pete Hegseth at the Marine Corps base at Quantico, Virginia today.
Today, at my direction, each service will ensure that every requirement for every combat MOS, for every designated combat arms position, returns to the highest male standard only.
Highest male
because
standard.
This job is life or death. Standards must be met. And not just met, at every level we should seek to exceed the standard, to push the envelope, to compete. It's common sense.
The highest male standard? But what about the ladies? What about transgender troops? What about Operation Petticoat? What about the Democrats and Joe Biden and the feminization of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff who wanted the military to put on a show, a musical, kick, kick, turn, kick, turn, kick. I gotta tell you, you are living in a crazy time. Yes, we are. But Pete Hegseth, wait, the highest male standard. And look, I was at the Pentagon for 10 years as a news guy, and I covered the U.S. military and spent all my time with the U.S. military for a decade and the U.S. intelligence community. And the truth is you need, not you want, or it's convenient, you need women in our military for a whole range of reasons. But at the same time, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to see women, one in the midst of a unit or a whole unit of women being on the very pointy end of the spear and the front lines. Let's leave that to the toughest, strongest men in the world. And, and the women play vitally important roles in the U.S. military. But when it comes to kicking down the door and going through with your SOCOM 16 rifle, let's leave that to the toughest, strongest guys we can find. And he's talking about the highest male standard. And that'll cause the news media Democrats to lose what's left of their mind. Pete Hegseth today at the Marine Corps base at Quantico.
Upholding and demanding high standards is not toxic. Leading warfighters toward the goals of high, gender-neutral, and uncompromising standards in order to forge a cohesive, formidable, and lethal Department of War is not toxic. Real toxic leadership is endangering subordinates with low standards. Real toxic leadership is promoting people based on immutable characteristics or quotas instead of based on merit.
DEI, you're promoted because you're black. You're promoted because you're a woman. You're the first woman chief of naval operations. Well, that's great if she's the greatest admiral that we've got in the fleet, then that's wonderful. But if she's just being promoted because of her genitalia, which is what Democrats do everywhere because it's all show business for them. Pete Hegseth, this is kind of a fun one. Fat generals and fat admirals need not apply.
Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a 4-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test.
Chairborne ranger. I want to be a chairborne ranger. That's pretty good stuff. I've got to say, and he's talking about how you got to pass the physical test. We found out about the FBI recently. The FBI Academy, the women have to do one pull-up for the PT, the physical test. And isn't that amazing? And since we're talking about the military and everything, right now, even as we speak, in Hanover, New Jersey, Hanover, New Jersey, where you'll find McGuire Air Force Base, or it's joint base. Everything's a joint base now. But an air base in New Jersey on lockdown right now because of what they're calling an active shooter at a U.S. military base. Now, this might predictably be a terrorist attack, and it might be ISIS-related, or it might just be the Democratic Party again, because it so often is just the Democratic Party in these terrorist attacks, murdering as many people as they can. So is it the Islamists or is it the Democrats again? Not easy to say for sure. Got to say. We've got another so-called active shooter. Gunman shooting. Don't have any details on what the damage is thus far, but McGuire Air Force Base, Joint Base McGuire in New Jersey, now under attack. Apparently a single active shooter at the base, and it's a crazy world out there, isn't it? It's almost like, I know there's always crime and shootings and difficulties in the world, but in the United States these days, the news stream is like warfare, isn't it? Every day there is another incident that is very much like warfare. And it is so very often coming from, again, not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda, but from the left in the United States of America, the Democrats they've raised generations of crazy people to hate everything around them, the country, the flag, the U.S. flag anyway. They're fine with a rainbow flag and a transgender flag and the so-called Palestinian flag and the Mexican flag, and they're fine with raising the Chinese Communist Party flag over City Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which they're doing today, the Democrats are. Isn't that amazing? And President Trump today, talking about it, he's working on peace in the Middle East. He's trying to get the Democrats to agree to keep the government open. The Democrats are
holding a gun to the head of the baby and demanding, $1.5 trillion, certainly hundreds of billions of dollars. Refund NPR. I got to tell you, fund, how about this? Let's take the same amount of money that we're giving to NPR and give it to conservative talk radio. How about that? That would be even, wouldn't it? And then we could have a crew of 33 people doing this show, and I could drive a golden Mercedes-Benz station wagon to my beach house in Rehoboth, just like, Judy Woodruff. That'd be fine, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be good? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, President Trump is also talking about deploying federal resources, let's say, including perhaps military guard, to places where the left is ravaging everything, like Portland, Oregon. Used to be such a fun city with such a fun reputation. Portlandia, and it was a funny TV show. Who was that guy in Portland? Oh, yeah, Fred Armisen, who's capable of being funny. And Portlandia was kind of a fun and funny show. And they made fun of the overly hip hipsters in Portland, and they were a joke, and people made fun of them. But then they took over the city hall and the city government there, and now they're all on the side of madness, anarchy. But President Trump tell you about deploying federal resources to crush violent radical leftist terrorism in Portland. But we're going to have to go to New Jersey now to Joint Base McGuire Air Force Base, to do the same thing, because the left is inciting warlike violence everywhere you look. Isn't that amazing? Yes, it is. Just great. All right, let's see. Let's go to let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Donna calling from Frederick, Maryland. Oh, Donna, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Well, hello, Chris. What a fantastic show, and you've covered so much. We have the best callers to this radio station. And
That's a fact.
I think I'm biased. I got to admit I am, but for valid reasons. I have a slight difference on the narrative seeding that's being planted with regard to certain people in Trump's orbit, Kash Patel being one of them. And I'm looking at this from kind of a different angle than what Jason had, and I love his opinions. I'm with him on most things.
Uh-huh.
But this one, I've got a slightly different tilt on it, and it's this. We often hear the lies from the left. There's no doubt about it. Sometimes people that are within our orbit modify things that may benefit the public at large. That being said, I'm looking at this, I'm analyzing more and digging a little deeper into certain people, because I've seen it within Trump's orbit. I've seen, Radcliffe against Tulsi Gabbard on occasion. I mean, this is not new news. So I'm getting my eye off of the narrative, and I'm thinking about what the benefit of it may be. And that's the way we should be looking at a lot of the stuff that we're spoon-fed every day from the left and from the right, and think maybe more bicamerally on some of these things. And I just wanted to say, the end of this statement is just in time with all of this stuff. We're taking baby steps. None of these changes are going to happen overnight. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking long-term, in time. We have to knock down the rhetoric a little bit, observe, be aware, and we'll just see where the chips fall.
Well, I think I know what you're saying, Donna, but what Jason was talking about was a number of important things, and Kash Patel, and yesterday saying there are 274 FBI agents. Day before yesterday he said it, but we talked about it yesterday. 274 FBI agents sent to the Capitol on January 6th, and they were all in plain clothes. And Kash Patel came out and told us, they were sent in for crowd control. Well, nobody sends in 274 plainclothes officers to do crowd control. The whole point of crowd control is the presence of law enforcement.
And that means uniforms or vests or jackets that say, big yellow letters, FBI. And I don't believe that they were sent in at the time to play a crowd control role. It wouldn't make any sense to send in plainclothes people, crowd control. And I've got to say, and I think that we hold our people accountable in real time as conservatives. Yeah. And the Democrats, they lied to us all the time, and they send in 274 FBI people in plain clothes, and then they're being put in handcuffs and then have them taken off as soon as they go inside, and they're fist bumping each other. There's video of that from the security cameras. Our news media doesn't look at the video. They don't cover the news. They don't report the news. But we do here, Donna, and I expect the Republicans to have back and forth that sometimes may even be tough love, whereas the Democrats just stay on the team. They goose-step together always. They never deviate from the sheet music, and they lie to us all the time. Those aren't baby steps we need to take. Mamdani, the commie in New York, was asked, if you're mayor of New York and Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, came to New York, would you arrest him? Would you have him arrested and hand over to the International Criminal Court for trial?
In our commitments. And I think that our city should uphold the warrants the International Criminal Court issues, whether it be for Benjamin Netanyahu or Vladimir Putin.
Yes. Well, the United States does not recognize the authority of the International Criminal Court, but he'll spin off and be his own country in New York, and he'll arrest foreign leaders and start wars. This is the commie Mamdani, who's also an Islamist, and he's the Democrat Party's nominee to become mayor of New York. Pretty much a shoo-in at this point.